Hello everyone, I'm Yalaka Wanakon. Welcome to episode 4 of Movie Autopsy with me, the movie doctor, the show. We go deep into it and analyse a film like no man or woman has done before. Now, as you can see from the title, today's show, we are looking at the documentary that the world is talking about. It is, of course, Framing Britney Spears, presented by the New York Times. There have been a lot of celebrity documentaries in the last few years. Some of them have been exposing celebrities as sick and twisted criminals. Others have been bogus extortion attempts. But this stands alone. This documentary explores in detail how pop culture failed a superstar. So to somehow analyse this, to somehow make sense of all this, I'm joined by who else? Rachel Saruta. You've completed a hat trick. You've completed a hat trick.
I know. That's it now. You'll never have me back again.
No. Well, why ditch a winning formula?
Time to spill the tea.
Nice. So, as always, it's 5 categories. We've got story, we've got performance, direction, music, impact, each of which we're going to be giving a rating out of 10, followed by an overall rating. The documentary explores Spears' rise to fame as a pop star, her pretty disgraceful treatment by the paparazzi, her very highly publicised breakdown in 2007, and her court-mandated conservatorship overseen by her father, Jamie Spears. Now, for those of you who don't know, a conservatorship is a legal concept in the United States in which a guardian or a protector is appointed by a judge to mandate the financial affairs and or daily life of another due to physical or mental limitations, or in many cases, old age. And a person under conservatorship is a conservatee, a term that can refer to an adult. Now, it's also worth pointing out that they don't make documentaries about everybody. You've got to be pretty big to have a documentary dedicated to you. And certainly from our generation, Britney Spears is one of the biggest pop stars in recent memory. She has sold, to date, close to 90 million albums worldwide. Her debut album, Baby More Time, sold 27 million records worldwide. 6 #1 albums, 24 top 40 hits, and only one of 3 artists to win the Billboard Millennium Award. So, Rachel, how the hell did we get here?
The documentary itself, I did find a little bit confused as to what point the documentary was making. Like, was it there to show the struggles of Britney? Was it propaganda designed to stir the pot? Like, considering, again, how serious the topic is, I felt like it kind of didn't really do it justice.
I did like what they did, because it definitely did its job in terms of shining light on the truth and really highlighting how horribly she's been treated from the very beginning. And when I say the very beginning, I mean the very beginning. One of the very early shots is her on a program called Star Search, which was back in 1992. She's 10 years old and she displays wonderful talent singing a rendition of Judds' Love Can Build a Bridge. And at the end of the performance, the host is Ed McMahon, is probably in his 60s, I would say, asks her if she has a boyfriend. And obviously she says no, because she's 10. And then after that, he says, "What about me?" to a 10-year-old girl on TV, and everybody claps, everybody laughs. There's just no, it's not even weird. It is weird. That's disgusting, is what it is. And that really
very creepy.
And that really sums up what happens. We live in a world now where people are getting famous for all sorts of sex tapes and TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and. But what I mean by that is that she conquered the world through sheer talent, and everybody was so quick to take her down in just the most disgraceful way.
I kind of feel like the documentary should have come out a few years ago, because in terms of, I think they've made this now because of the conservatorship that has come into light again. And the fact that she's still obviously not in control of her life, basically. But I kind of feel like the whole documentary as it was presented would have been a lot stronger if it was brought out a few years ago, maybe alongside like the Me Too movement and stuff, because it then becomes a lot more disturbing of the fact that she's 39 and she's not in control of her own life. Like, they don't listen to her, they don't take her seriously.
Well, it's interesting that you mention that, because the New York Times, obviously, who presented this, they did a huge kind of thorough investigation into the whole conservatorship thing. They released an article, and their research and investigation was in 2016, which was 5 years ago, which is a bit weird. Yeah, so that in itself is crazy, but they did that 5 years ago, so they shed light on this situation. So yeah, like you said, that would have been the right time to follow that up with, the presentation of this. And obviously, the Me Too. Obviously, we're not saying that anyone should be jumping on a bandwagon, but this is very much like now they've done it, and now that we've had the Me Too movement, we see all of these things in a lot different light, and that's why people feel a lot more difficult about this kind of thing, or the treatment, because it happened.
I am, and I'm not shocked by her treatment.
Oh no, it's not
throughout the years. The documentary, you got an insight into how the paparazzi work, which I mean, I hate paparazzi anyway. Not as if I've ever had an experience with them, but the way that they operate and things like that, I just hate them. They just think it's acceptable to treat people like this, especially women. I don't think they never do that kind of behavior to the men.
Yeah, they do.
I can't remember ever seeing that many men being bombarded in the way she has. I could be wrong. I'm sure there has been, but in comparison, it's generally disturbing and wrong to watch. They're following her once again, and he says in the interview, I approach her and say, look, hey Britney, I'm just going to ask you a few questions, and then I'm going to leave you alone. And obviously she loses it, which they're making it almost sound as if that was the wrong thing to do. I'm like, no, that's perfectly reasonable. She's just trying to live her life, go and see her kids, she's only got visitation rights, she wants custody of them, and you're still trying to hound her for questions and taking pictures of her when she just wants to be left alone in private to deal with what she's going through. And you can't even respect that. You can't respect her distance. I'm watching and we're really worried about you. It's like, well, if you're that worried, leave her alone.
Just leave me alone.
That video that went viral when Britney had her breakdown, of that person on YouTube crying into
leave Britney alone.
It makes sense now. Everyone took the piss out of that video at the time, but you look at it now and you go, that kid knew what was up. And one thing I noticed as well is throughout the whole documentary, especially when it came to her mental struggles and her breakdown and then leading on to the conservatorship, where the hell was Britney's mum? I know she's there at the beginning, and then she pops up again in 2019 saying she wants to be involved in her daughter's health, but I don't know if it's just the way the documentary portrayed it, but where has she been before then? And the document it barely mentions her, except at the beginning of her career, and then a little interview sort of again on the Ellen show again near the beginning of her career, and then she just seems to disappear.
Then her dad comes in. I mean, it's very clear from the beginning that her dad's really not on the scene until the checks start coming in. It's her mum who's kind of spoiling it, and then there's a little bit of a switch around in terms of her mum basically just vanishes off the scene.
I think it started to hit home to people that famous people can suffer too. Maybe we shouldn't be putting all this pressure on them. I know people still do, but it's started to come into light, and people are starting to take it seriously. So obviously now in retrospect, people are looking at what happened to Britney Spears and going, she's seriously needed, she was crying out for help and nobody wanted to help her.
But anyway, we could sit just on this, we could talk about this forever. But for you to give it a rating out of 10.
For the story, I'd probably say a 7, because like I said, the whole reason that the documentary kind of came into light was because of the conservatorship. But like I said, it didn't really they didn't really talk about it until 2/3 of the way through the documentary. And I'd probably say a 7, because I kind of felt like it didn't really focus on what it should have. It sort of felt like it was just trying to fill minutes rather than really bulking it up with what's going on.
Well, morning show. Justin Timberlake is in the house. And I just want to ask you one question. Did you Britney Spears? Yes or no?
Oh, man.
Come on, man.
Okay, I did it. No,
I'd like to think that at first he'll date a popular female singer. Publicly, they'll claim to be virgins, but privately, he hid it.
Crazy how Justin Timberlake had such a hand in fucking over the careers and lives of two of the most talented women in music ever. Anyways, stream Janet Jackson and Britney Spears, and I hope both women have an amazing day. Beyond showing how impossibly horrible the media was to Britney Spears in the 2000s, I'm glad that the Britney doc again begins to reckon with the idea of how much Justin Timberlake's career in the noughties came at the expense of women like Britney and Janet Jackson. Still waiting for Justin Timberlake to publicly apologise to Britney Spears. Well, wait no more. Justin Timberlake did go on record and apologise. He put up the following statement on his Instagram. I stand on the shoulders of women I've thrown under the bus whilst being a white man pretending to be black whilst just copying Michael Jackson's music and dance moves whilst holding hands with women who aren't my wife, singer said. I've seen the messages, tags, comments and concerns, and I want to respond. I am deeply sorry for the times in my life where my actions contributed to the problem, where I spoke out of turn or did not speak up for what was right. I understand that I fell short in these moments, and in many others benefited from a system that condones misogyny and racism. I specifically want to apologise to Britney Spears and Janet Jackson, both individually because I care for and respect these women, and I know I failed. I also feel compelled to respond in part because everyone involved deserves better, and most importantly, because this is a larger conversation that I wholeheartedly want to be part of and grow from. The industry is flawed. It sets men, especially white men, up for success. It's designed that way. As a man in a privileged position, I have to be vocal about this. Because of my ignorance, I didn't recognize it for all it was while it was happening in my own life, but I do not want to ever benefit from others being pulled down again. I have not been perfect in navigating all of this throughout my career. I know this apology is a first step and does not absolve the past. I want to take accountability for my own missteps in all this, as well as being part of a world that uplifts and supports. I care deeply about the well-being of people I love and have loved. I can do better and will do better. Just to add a bit more fuel to the fire. There was a December 2000 magazine in 2002 had a headline on its cover that said, "Can we ever forgive Justin Timberlake for all that sissy music? Hey, at least he got into Britney's pants."
This is actually like really interesting for me as well, because I've been a fan of Justin, especially, and I did like his solo music. So this is actually brought into like my own naivety and checking myself and going, okay, so I really actually appreciated Justin Timberlake. I didn't always recognize that he did kind of come off as a white guy pretending to be black with his music. So I found that a really interesting thing for me, particularly because I was actually like, oh, I really want to forgive him because I've always liked his music. I've always liked his acting. Yeah, I've liked him. But actually, you know, and obviously it's that old saying of the first thing you sort of want to say is what you're trained to say or to think. The second thing you think is what you actually believe. So if you see someone in the street and go, oh, well, why is she wearing that? It doesn't suit her. Then you go, actually, no, she can wear whatever the hell she wants. Like we've been indoctrinated to believe what we say or think first. But then actually, when you check it, you go, actually, no, this is my opinion, how it should be. I think it'll be interesting as well to see how his career sort of progresses from here, because some people are just going to think, oh, he apologized, it sounds really sincere, you know, not realizing that what he's written has been written for him. Probably. Or edited for him by a PR member.
The backlash has been so strong. I genuinely think that people will never see Justin Timberlake in the same way again. But they did a good way of making the lawyers feel really slimy to the point where it's almost a cliche. I mean, the name of the lawyer that her father instructed to be involved with from the beginning, his name is actually called Andrew Wallet. You couldn't really make that up. That was, I mean, that was crazy. What was interesting is that, you know, her dad is a very mysterious figure in all of this, because they kind of didn't touch on too much. Like he was clearly just not on the scene for a good chunk, and then he kind of comes back to take over conservatorship. And like you said, there was a huge gap with like, well, hang on, how come? Where has he just come from? Why is her mum not involved? Her dad was very summed up nicely from a quote from the documentary when they asked Britney's record marketing director, who says, the only thing he ever said to me was, my daughter's going to be so rich, she's going to buy me a boat. And that's all I'm going to say about Jamie.
They didn't really have any clips of him throughout, like only when he sort of came to pick her up from one of the mental health hospitals. you see him trying to protect Britney, which is, you know, fair enough. But the fact that they sort of, at the very beginning of the documentary, they say about him having, being an alcoholic, filing for bankruptcy, having failed businesses, and then he has the quote from him about, oh, she's going to be so rich, she's going to buy me a boat, and then suddenly he pops up again. It's just really sus. Like, you just sort of go, which I think is basically what the Free Britney movement has kind of noticed as well, and the podcast as well that started the Free Britney movement, it kind of seemed to notice that as well, that he's just come out of nowhere and suddenly she's got no control over her life. It feels like if the bank is in charge of her money, they will try to be more sensible about it and look at it from a business point of view, whereas her dad is just probably going to be more interested in just getting money off of her.
To end on a sort of more positive note, I guess, I think I did really like the how they use the kind of the fan movement and how they've kind of brought this together, and how they started showing like how fans have shown their dedication and support and why they've gravitated towards Britney and why they're doing this. I thought that was really quite heartwarming to see, you know, that these people have actually come together and put this together. And it does show that even the world ordinary people have got power, like kind of influence. With all that in mind, out of 10.
See, I was sort of thinking along the lines of maybe a 6, but after sort of hearing so I think when I was watching it, I was just a little bit confused between whether some people were supposed to be seen as a bad guy or a good guy, or in support of Britney or against Britney. So I was thinking maybe kind of a 6. And again, it kind of felt like a lot of it was trying to push it down a certain direction rather than sort of get necessarily the truth. It was just trying to push it down one bias, which I suppose is the point of the documentary in the first place. But yeah, so my thoughts were a 6.
Okay, I actually went with an 8. Purely because I was just a big fan of the naming and shaming and like taking people to task. But we also have to remember that it wasn't the point. We weren't told that was the point of this. The crucial point that this was the point of the conservatorship was they were very much lacking in information in that, and it was too vague, in my opinion. And you really, you know, quite eloquently shone on that. So you've convinced me that an 8 is not correct. That is too generous. So would you settle for a 7?
Oh, I'll settle for a 7, because I agree with some of the points that you made about the naming and shaming is actually is good, because it needed to be done, I think.
You know, like I told you, they did an investigation in 2016 and they wrote an article about it. But I felt like they didn't put any of that forward, which was a bit weird.
It didn't feel like hard-hitting journalism. It felt very conspiracy theory-esque to me. Yeah. And that annoyed me, because I feel like it took away from the actual seriousness and concern that Britney may be under her father's control. Like, so for me, that kind of, it annoyed me, because it didn't feel like hard hitting as it should have.
We came into this knowing that she had this conservatorship. But like you said, that there was a lot of theories from that she's being held against her will and she's trapped and she's trying to get free. And a lot of that was pure speculation, you know, fans reading into stuff.
Whenever I see these kind of documentaries, that's in the back of my mind thinking, okay, but some people genuinely believe this. So if you tell them that something's going on or some sort of conspiracy theory, they will just eat it up. And I'm not saying anything negative to the Americans, but because British people, European, etc., people will do this. They like to believe these extraordinary stories that are thrown at them. So that kind of mindset is in the back of my mind, thinking they could just be eating this up because they want to believe there's something going on, which is bad for such a serious topic, for such a big idol. I think is a negative effect.
She's just doing like a Q&A on like Instagram Live or whatever. And, you know, the celebrities are never reading, they can't read all these comments. You know, you've got thousands of people, nearly millions of people watching. There's no way that they can read every comment. And I think there was one that says, you know, if you're being trapped, wear yellow in your next video. And okay, she is wearing like a yellow top in the next one, but that could just be a coincidence. But I also think, and I can't be sure of this, but I also think that there was an element of let's laugh at these people.
I agree.
Like, look, like,
because they viewed it as they almost made it out as if it was sort of fan hysteria, and you know, extreme support. And I think because they don't have Britney's family commenting,
Yeah, that was my
it just
next
just plays into this, oh, it's just fans being fans.
Yeah, my next point was on that I think this really suffered because we didn't have any kind of comments from Britney and family. The real lack of it really took a lot from this. Just think of the level this would have gone to. I mean, it's reached a big level, obviously, but the impact would have been greater had we had some comments on this from Britney and co.
I will say that it, in certain parts, it did make me feel really uncomfortable, which is a good thing because you feel uncomfortable. Like you said, the clip with in 1992 when she's 10 years old doing her performance, and afterwards the hosts ask her to be her boyfriend. It's like gross. It's disgusting. If you just think you feel uncomfortable watching that, imagine how Britney would have felt. Yeah. And so I think that was done very well.
All well and good making everyone feel bad, but I think we would have been nice to hear more about the conservatorship, and that's because that's what you said this was about.
Yes.
So I think there was a bit kind of thin in the key areas. So with that in mind, out of 10, how would you
I've given it a 6 again.
Yeah, given it a 6.
Because it's just, I just thought it was very unoriginal. Because again, like we said, it's the New York Times. They had a lot to work with. I think that they potentially had a lot more to work with, a lot more clips, a lot more footage. I just think it wasn't quite pulled together as well as it could have been. I know in terms of the music that's actually in the documentary, there's not much to say about it because it's very little, and it's just some little instrumental sort of like dee, 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 kind of synthesized sounds in the background, which again annoyed me because it just played into that whole conspiracy theory feel, like the Alien documentaries you see. It's the similar sort of music, which again took away from its impact. It made it feel again like it was just a conjured thing rather than it being based on facts. It felt like, oh, we've heard this information and we've heard this, doesn't this sound like this? It's like, okay, yeah, sure. They didn't really use music. They used this conspiracy theory-esque type instrumental in the background. It just again took away from its seriousness and its impact.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, as I said, it's difficult to analyze music in a documentary, but it can play a part. It certainly can add to the experience. And they didn't really try really with anything. They just stuck some generic stuff in there. I honestly thought, following on from what we discussed on the last episode, but I did think use of maybe her music or cover versions of it actually might have added to it. I'm not saying they should have used the string version of Toxic. That might have been a bit too much.
Go extra. Just be full extra with it. It's Britney, bitch.
But something like that, would have definitely added to it, and definitely given it a little bit more flavor. Like that would have been it definitely would have added, I think, to the impact.
She has some amazing songs, and I think at one point they were discussing the fact, she's very difficult to not control. Like she'll do what she wants to do. If she doesn't like something, she tells you, etc. But then obviously they're then going on to say she's now under the control of her father. I mean, she's got a song called Slave. I think it's Slave for You. But they could have done an acoustic version, done a slightly more twisted version, and it would have just sort of gone, oh my God. Like listening to the lyrics, you would have just gone, okay, that's really freaky. It's just giving the whole song a new meaning.
There's a much more to report on, and that's not our fault, that's theirs. So out of 10?
I suppose I can only really give it a 3 because it's like there's some music in it, but
yeah. I suppose, if they had none, it would have got a 0, because they put some in, we have to, but it's not.
To be fair though, sometimes the lack of music entirely could have been made more of an impact because you're like, there's no music, they're just being factual about it.
It would have added to it, but they just went with a very formulaic, generic, and 3, give it a 3. I think can't get any higher than that. I suppose to start with, there has been some fallout, and the big news, I suppose, in the wake of this is that a judge has now rejected Jamie Spears' request to keep his previous level of power over his daughter's investments. Britney Spears wanted her father removed and have a bank, Bessemer Trust, which is a private bank, in charge of everything. The ruling now means that Mr. Spears and the private trust company, Bessemer Trust, now have equal power to manage her finances. So as a result, he is now expected to work with the company to create a budget and an investment proposal for the singer's estate. The documentary labelled this as a small victory. My question is, why is there a conservatorship in the first place? Why is it still there? But no one wants to answer this question, not even the documentary. So that has been the big kind of fallout on that. But apart from that, I suppose this is why it's going to be interesting to kind of get our opinions, because regardless of what we think the flaws are, there has been a huge impact to this. Like I said at the beginning, it is a documentary that the world is talking about, and it has everyone has really got onto this. Sorry Britney was trending, and publications and media outlets and celebrities alike have all jumped on the bandwagon and either done Free Britney or said sorry or both. So it has reached, and people have been acknowledging how disgusting her treatment really was.
The whole thing in general actually made me feel quite annoyed by the end of it, because the aim was clearly to make you sympathise and side with Britney, which I said before, I fully agree with. Her conservative situation should be brought into serious light. But I felt it was too obvious and too forced, which made me less inclined to believe what was being said. Should we be allowing the over-sexualization of young girls, even if they are of legal age? Should we be allowing that kind of behavior when they're so young? Yeah, the whole thing in general, like, I was just a bit disappointed, because I was kind of hoping for more from it.
My mind is boggled by the fact that, why is it even there in the first place now? Why is it not being petitioned to be removed entirely? Surely, is she not? They didn't touch on her. Like, do they not think she's well enough to be doing all of these things? She's clearly touring and recording and doing all these things, so she's clearly of a sound, healthy body and mind. But yet she's deemed not. And I
really hope it's not the stereotypical male looking at a emotional, hysterical female not being able to control her emotions. Therefore, she shouldn't be allowed to have control back over her finances, because she won't be able to handle it.
It has had a tremendous impact in one regard in terms of treatment, and how, very, very, like I said, sobering and sad look of how, society and pop culture destroyed a young woman. An innocent young woman who was destroyed because of pop culture, because, and all of us are complicit in that to one degree or another. So from that regard, there's a huge impact. But I suppose if you've got to be self-analytical and critical of this, the damage was very much already done. So sort of hashtagging and tweeting the word sorry and the Instagramming an apology it's not really good enough when you think the years of shame and just horror that she had to go through. And like I said, it's because of that treatment she was pushed to a breakdown, which led to this conservatorship. So that's regard, we are all complicit in that, to her current state. So she might remain on that for the rest of her life.
I genuinely struggled to get a real opinion on the topic as a whole, because I was just a bit like, it felt a bit thin.
To give the impact a rating out of 10, I've gone with a 7, just because I think that we've explained why it can't be a 10, but they were good in that they obviously have created a huge, impact from certain things in the documentary, which can't be ignored.
This is true, but I kind of, in terms of the impact of the documentary, yes, it's got people talking, but I think the reason they made the documentary is because of the Free Britney movement. Which got a lot of traction on social media, etc. So I kind of feel like the impact from the documentary is running alongside of what's already there. So in my head, I'm kind of thinking maybe a 6 out of 10.
Okay, 6.5.
6.5.
6.5. Okay, 6.5, and an overall rating?
Probably still a 6.
Yeah,
I don't think it's not a terrible documentary. It just is a little bit lost in what it was trying to say.
No, agreed.
The kind of angle it was going for, and just it could have done more. It's distinctly sort of like, okay, yeah, it's a documentary. It's there. It is a documentary, but it's not world changing like some others that we've seen.
What I will say is that we're giving it a 6 out of 10, and I think normally if we're going to give something like that a 6 out of 10, people are going to be like, oh, there's not much point worthing it. What I will say is, just because we're getting at that, I would fully recommend that you watch this when you at the first available opportunity. It's something that everyone needs to watch. You know, we've told you know the things that they don't touch into, but the things that they do really well in this are really important for everybody to watch. It's a real lesson, and it's a really disturbing look at kind of how, you know, some celebrity can really be a vicious and evil playground, I think. Yeah, let us know what you think, guys. Obviously, remember to like, to share, and please do subscribe, and obviously click the little bell button so that when we do release one, you'll be the first to know. Rachel, thank you very much again for gracing us through the presents.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. I'm sure we'll see you again very soon.
The tea has been spilled.
Indeed it has. So this has been Movie Autopsy. I've been the Movie Doctor, and I will see you next time.